Hi everyone and welcome back to Brian's Horror Corner, or welcome if you're new to my channel. So we're going to finish off the first month of this 1980s, 1981 specifically, part of my overall 1980s horror series. With a slasher movie, of course, because it's 1981 and that year, of course, is known for slashers. And this is a slasher that I both have on physical media as part of my Blue Underground collection. And it's also a slasher I've been looking forward to watching because I've never seen it before, but I've heard it talked about. Excuse me. I've heard it talked about by a lot of people over the years, and so I've kind of been anxious to watch this one. And that movie is, drum roll, The Prowler, that I have on DVD as part of my Blue Underground collection. So yeah, The Prowler, first time watch for me, 1981 slasher. Let's finish off January with a slasher movie, which is very fitting. So let's talk about The Prowler. So, The Prowler is a 1981 American slasher film directed by Joseph Zito, who also went on to direct Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. My favorite Friday the 13th, by the way. Written by Neil Barbera and Glenn Leopold, and starring Vicky Dawson, Christopher Goutman, Lawrence Tierney, Cindy Weintraub, and Farley Granger. The film follows a group of college students in a coastal California town who are stalked and murdered during a graduation party by an apparent World War II veteran who killed his ex-girlfriend in 1945. So on March 12, 1944, in Avalon, California, during World War II, a woman named Rosemary writes a letter to her boyfriend breaking up with him. On June 28, 1945, Rosemary is attending a graduation dance with her new boyfriend Roy, who suggests they go out to Lover's Lane. Well, there they are attacked by a mysterious prowler wearing an army combat uniform, who impales them both with a pitchfork and leaves behind a red rose. On June 28, 1980, college senior Pam McDonald is making last-minute arrangements for that night's graduation ball, the first one to be held since the 1945 murders. Helping Pam are her friends Lisa, Sherry, and Sherry's love interest Carl. Later, while visiting her boyfriend and the town's deputy, Mark London, Pam overhears a report of a prowler. She expresses her concern about Mark's safety because the sheriff is leaving town for a fishing trip. Mark reassures her and promises to meet her at the dance. Pam then heads back to the dorm to get ready and eventually leaves with her friends. Sherry stays behind to shower and receives a surprise visit from Carl. While undressing, he is attacked and killed with a bayonet. The killer then impales Sherry with a pitchfork in the shower. So yeah, that's kind of our setup and premise, the beginning of The Prowler from 1981. As far as the cast goes, we have Vicky Dawson as Pam McDonald, Christopher Goutman as Deputy Mark London, Lawrence Tierney as Major Chatham, Farley Granger as Sheriff George Frazier, Cindy Weintraub as Lisa, Lisa Dunseth as Sherry, and David Senderholm as Carl. So yeah, that's the setup, the premise, and the cast for the 1981 slasher movie directed by Joseph Zito, The Prowler. I enjoyed this movie. I would say this is a tier 2 slasher. It's not quite on the level of John Carpenter's Halloween or Black Christmas or My Bloody Valentine. That's kind of first tier slasher. And again, I have a lot of slasher movies, even from the 80s, to watch yet. So I'm probably not one to, to rank it at this point. But it's not quite on that level. But I think it's a really solid slasher movie, especially for that time. So let's just go ahead and get into my thoughts about The Prowler, starting with the pros and the things that I liked about the movie. And the thing you got to start with are the kills. I mean, this movie, the highlight, the star of this movie are the kills. Both because the visual flair of it, and especially with Tom Savini being involved with the kills, you knew they were going to be good going into them. And it doesn't disappoint. In fact, Tom Savini actually came out and said that he thought this movie was his best work as far as special effects go with kills. And I would have to agree with him. I think he's probably right there. But the kills stand out the most about this movie. They're very well done. There's no cutaways or fast editing like you get in a lot of other slasher movies or even horror movies in general. All the kills, it really stays and lingers on the kills for a good amount of time. like I said, with that excellent Tom Savini special effects work. Very visually graphic makeup and gore effects. Some of the best are in this movie. Like I said, Tom Savini said that, and I agree with him. I especially like the pool kill and the shower kill in 1980, and even the double murder kill at the beginning of this movie in 1945 that kind of kicks everything off. Like I said, they're all, at least 4 or 5 of the 7 or 8, and of those 8, 2 of them are at the same time. They're all very brutal and visual, I would say, at least 4 or 5 of them. So yeah, big fan of the kills in this movie. If you're somebody that watches slasher or horror movies in general for the kills and the gore and the blood, then I think you're really going to enjoy this movie, and I would recommend it to you on that. Let's see. I like the backstory and the setup at the beginning of this movie, where we actually get to see it play out instead of being told about it in an exposition dumped by a character in modern times. I thought it gave the movie a bit more weight from a story standpoint, actually getting to see that play out in 1945, and they do a good job with the production of that. Seeing the old-fashioned cars and dress, the way people talk back then. It wasn't like they just they threw one car in from the 40s and then you could tell everything else was modern. So I enjoyed that opening in 1945. Especially from a backstory standpoint. And while the overall premise and story is fairly simple, I think it's set up well, leading us into the rest of the movie in modern times, which was 1980 when this movie was made. I especially like the war/military tie-in to the story of this movie. It's kind of unique, and I think it actually makes it more effectively believable what ends up happening in this movie than what you get in some other slasher and horror movies. Even in the 80s, but really any of them. This is something you could actually see happening where, a soldier who's stuck overseas fighting in World War II ends up getting this letter and gets his heart broken when he's fighting for the country and kind of snaps and, goes on some sort of a killing spree kind of thing. That's a much more believable motivation for the character than, like I said, what you get in a lot of other slasher movies. So I like that part of the movie. I think they did a good job there. Thought the reveal of the killer at the end was pretty effectively set up, and I didn't see it coming, to be honest, which tells me that you did a good job, because in a lot of these slasher movies or horror movies, I usually can kind of see the killer coming or the reveal coming 15 or 20 minutes into the movie, but I have to say, the way they set it up, the way they played it out with red herrings and other characters in the movie, I was thinking about a lot of people, but who it ended up being wasn't who I was thinking of. And so when I think back on it, it makes some sense. But at the time of watching this, I thought Joseph Zito directed that very well, that part of the movie, with setting up that big twist, if you will. So yeah, effective reveal of the killer towards the end of the movie. It throws off the viewer with the red herrings and things, or at least it did me. The movie's well shot and well directed overall by Joseph Zito, with good use of killer POV shots, dark rooms that characters are walking in and out of, and locations like outside. Does a good job of building up tension throughout the movie. In certain scenes, obviously, especially in 1980, where most of the movie takes place, I thought inside these sororities or these dorms, whatever you want to call them, as well as outside, I thought that the tension was built up pretty well by Zito in this movie. And speaking of that, I do like the setting, especially outside of these dorms, campus houses, in front of these large houses or buildings, especially in 1945, where they have the lights on it for this big graduation ceremony party kind of thing going on. I thought that was very effective, though I don't know many college dorms or campuses that have houses that look like that. I still really like the setting of that, and the setting of this small coastal town in general. I've always been a fan in horror movies of the smaller coastal sort of towns. I think that makes for a good backdrop for the story being told. So I also like the setting inside of this the house of the character Major Chatham that our our characters spend a lot of time going in and out of a couple different times, and yeah, very effective setting and production design in this movie, I thought. And then finally, my final pro for this movie is I really like the look of the killer. Having this military dress or garb on. What did they call it earlier here? Army combat uniform, basically. But yeah, I thought that was very unique and original, and it adds a little something extra to a slasher movie where you don't, you know, a lot of slasher movies, it's a guy in a mask, a hockey mask, a Halloween mask, you know, other certain things, just kind of generic, bought at the store kind of mask. But this is an actual military combat uniform used by the killer when he was actually in World War II. So I don't know. I just thought that made the killer more unique and stood out a little bit more in the general slasher subgenre here during this time. So really like the look of the killer, especially the blackness to his uniform and how that plays in the lighting that Joseph Zito used. A very dark, almost a very dark figure, almost like in the background, the silhouette almost of this killer. I thought that was very effective. So those are my pros for the Prowler. As far as cons go, I only have a couple, but they are pretty significant. The characters I thought were really generic and forgettable in this movie. Now, a lot of times in slasher movies, that's for a reason, because they're just there to be killed on or off screen, basically. But the problem with, even in this movie, even our two main leads that we follow, Pam and Deputy Mark London, wasn't really all that connected to them. I didn't feel a strong attachment to them. Therefore, I didn't really have that that stressed out worry for their safety or wanting them to survive. I don't know. They were just kind of underwhelming, I should say, as the two main characters that we follow in this movie. Like, our final girl of Pam was more of your typical damsel in distress who has like one strong final girl moment when she does in The Killer at the end. But otherwise, it was, you know, it's a lot of screaming and running around. I mean, I won't say she's the worst damsel in distress I've seen in a slasher movie, but I kind of wish that character was a little bit stronger, had a little bit more depth to her. And kind of the same with her boyfriend, Deputy Mark London. I don't know, I didn't feel a lot from those characters, and I don't think they were all that strongly written, and I don't think that they were very well acted either, necessarily. So yeah, that was a big con. And then the other one is the end of the movie. I thought the end of the movie was a bit of a letdown. Not just our final conflict with the Prowler and Pam, and kind of how that comes to be, and I don't know. It just kind of left me underwhelmed. You know, when she finally does them in, it happens fast, and there's not really a lot lingering on it. Or I guess I wanted more from that. You know, you do a good job of building tension throughout the movie. I want a little bit more in the conflict and the climax of the movie when you have the confrontation between the final girl and the killer. And I just didn't feel like I got that in this movie. And then, of course, the other thing is the ridiculous final end right before the ending credits, where there's basically let me slow down. There's basically an hallucination sequence that takes place by our main character of Pam, which was completely tacked on and really just a result of this time when horror movies came out, where they had to have the one final scare when you think it's all over. And I thought this was one of the lamest ones, frankly. And then it just completely cuts to credits once we realize that this character was just having an hallucination. There was no purpose for it. It doesn't enhance anything. It doesn't make anything better. I think they would have been better off just ending the movie after she does in The Killer when they're struggling there. But so yeah, I really didn't care for that. If you watch my Friday the 13th movies, you know I wasn't a big fan of the way they had a lot of dream sequences at the end of those movies and then replayed them in the next one. But yeah, the whole hallucination sequence before the ending credits was a bit of a black eye for me here. But overall, guys, I can't deny this is a pretty solid slasher movie, especially for the time. Especially given our killer, the look of him, the brutality of the kills, as well as the gore having to do with him, with Tom Savini, some of his best work. And yeah, I enjoyed The Prowler. I'm going to give this movie an 8 out of 10. I think for an early 80s slasher movie, it sets out and does a better job than it doesn't. So 8 out of 10 for The Prowler from 1981. Go ahead and comment down below what you guys think of the Prowler. If you've seen it, do you like it more or less? The same? Why or why not? What are your reasons? Comment down below. Please like this video, hit the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my upcoming reviews. We still got 2.5 months of 1981 horror movies to review over the next 3 here. You also don't want to miss my other horror content, including a horror franchise that I have in March, kind of to break up this 1980s horror franchise coming up here. But we still have a month before then for February. We're going to take a look at another, I think it's another 12 or 13, I think it's 12 movies for 1981. So with that being said, I hope everybody's enjoying this series. I hope you're doing well. I hope your January was a good one. And as always, though, stay scared. Bye.